Hey everybody, this is Brother Jake Fry. I'm the pastor of Emmanuel Baptist Church, and I'm here to bring you the midweek word for this week. This week, I want to talk to you about something that is a phrase that I have used, and maybe you have used as well, as a source of comfort to us. And I think we all understand what we're trying to say when we use this phrase, but we need to be careful because sometimes I think we can use this phrase to excuse sin in our life and just allowing ourselves to be blind to some changes that we need to make in our life. And here's the phrase that I want to talk about today. Well, God knows your heart, or God knows my heart. I've heard that phrase before, and so have you. I not only have I heard that phrase, I have said that phrase before. Now, usually when we say that phrase, something has happened and we tried our best, but just didn't work out. I'll give you an example. Um, don't get to go to church this Sunday because you get called into work. Well, look, God knows my heart. He knows I wanted to be there. In that case, that's true. If you got called in, you couldn't help it. Last minute, it's one of those things that's just unavoidable. Of course, the Lord knows your heart, right? He knows that you had a desire to be there. You were planning on being there, but it just didn't work out this week for that reason. And it's one of those things that may happen once in a blue moon. And that's not necessarily the use of this phrase that I'm talking about. Sometimes we use that phrase more loosely than we should. And when there's sin in our life, we'll say, well, the Lord knows my heart. He knows that I'm not that bad of a person. He knows that I'm trying my best, and that's not typical of me to do that. He knows my heart, right? Um, it's interesting because in Sunday school this past Sunday, in our young adults class, we read from the book of Galatians where Paul was writing about walking in the Spirit, and he lists the uh, the signs of the fruit of the flesh, and then he lists the fruits of the Spirit. But before that, he writes about walking in the Spirit and wrestling with the flesh every day. And he says something that's so interesting to me. I'm paraphrasing here, but he basically says, the flesh and the Spirit wrestle, so that, quote, we do we do what we do not want to do. And I've done that before. I've committed sin, and I thought, man, I didn't really want to do that, um, but it happened. Now, what I want to share with you today is John chapter 2, verses 23 through 25. And I want to do that because I want to talk about this idea that God knows our heart. So, John chapter 2, verses 23 through 25. Now, when he was in Jerusalem, that's Jesus. Now, when he was in Jerusalem at the Passover feast, many believed in his name when they saw the signs that he was doing. But Jesus, on his part, did not entrust himself to them, because he knew all people, and needed no one to bear witness about man, for he himself knew what was in man. So just a quick explanation of what's going on here, and very brief. But Jesus is in Jerusalem at Passover, and the Bible says that many people were believing. Now we hear that and think, all right, that's great, right? All these people are believing and coming to faith in Christ, what's wrong with that? Well, it's the next phrase. They believed in his name when they saw the signs that he was doing. So they didn't really believe Jesus at his word. They believed Jesus because of the signs he did. Now, um, yes, signs are very appealing. Signs are affirming. It would have been amazing to see the signs, and of course, I mean, who in their right mind would see Jesus heal a lame man who's been crippled all of his life and start walking, for example, and not believe? But notice what the Bible says in verse 24. But Jesus did not entrust himself to them. Basically, he's saying here, look, they believe in me. They say they believe, but I'm not going to buy it. I'm not going to really trust them um, with my life. I'm not going to ask them to follow me because of their profession of faith. If I ask them to follow me, it's because of the grace of God, right? He didn't entrust himself to them, but here's the reason why. Not because he had a suspicion, not because he had some unanswered questions or he had intuition. Verse 24, because he knew all people. And friends, that's still the same truth today. He knows all people. Verse 25, no one needed to bear witness about man. No one needed to explain mankind to him or the motives of man or the heart of man, for he himself knew what was in man. The reason Jesus did not entrust himself to them was because he knew that their faith was not real. He knew their faith wasn't lasting. And verse 25 tells us that he knows what is in man. Now, I want to ask you a question. You know what is in your heart. Does it comfort you to know that Jesus knows what is in your heart? And if we're totally honest, the answer has to be no, right? You know, we hear the phrase, we hear the term, the advice: follow your heart, do what makes your heart happy. But the Bible says that the heart is sick, that it is deceitfully wicked. Who can understand it? And then when we say, well, Jesus knows my heart when we've made a mistake, understand that that's not always a good thing. That's not always something that should encourage us or comfort us. It should be something that convicts us to hear that Jesus knows our heart. Brothers and sisters, Jesus knows what's on our heart, what's on our mind. He knows the sinful thoughts that we have. He knows the temptations that we face. He knows the anger that we've harbored in our heart, the resentment, the grudges that we've privately held for so long. And that can be terrifying. But let me tell you the good news about this. Jesus, at this point in time, the Bible says he knew what was in man. And not only that, I believe the Bible teaches us that Jesus knew what was going to be in us in 2024, today on September 25th. Yet Jesus still went to the cross and died for us. Jesus knows our hearts, knew what was going to be on our hearts, and he still died for us. He still loves us. Friends, we shouldn't necessarily be comforted by the fact that Jesus knows what's in our heart. What we should be comforted by is that Jesus came to save our hearts. That Jesus came to give us a new heart. To give us to remove our heart of flesh, to give us, remove our heart of stone and give us a heart of flesh. To change us into a new creation. So friends, let's not settle for, well, the Lord knows my heart. Instead, let's celebrate the fact that Jesus has changed our heart. This has been the Midweek Word. I hope you've been blessed and encouraged today, and I will hopefully see you this Sunday at Emmanuel Baptist Church for our worship services. If you don't have a place to go worship, we would love to have you come be there this Sunday. I'll see you then.